Welcome to Healing Honeys, the podcast for girls with big dreams trying to balance it all. I'm Louise Rumble, serial entrepreneur, type A overachiever, healing girly, and holistic wellness coach who also once got called the Jesus of modern dating. But let's get one thing straight. My healing era has never been calm. I'm talking savage dating stories, 20 cigarettes a day, daddy issues, an anxious attachment style, and an autoimmune disorder too. Today, I've spent thousands of dollars on healing and therapy, and now I'm here to guide you, love you, and laugh with you as I share my favorite tips, tricks, and rituals that have saved me along the way. With new episodes every Wednesday, expect girl talk, psychology, and the nervous system, as well as love, sex, and dating, wellness, fitness, and a little bit of business and spirituality too. So get in, honey. We are balancing healing, hustling, and life, and the best is yet to come. And if you're looking for ad-free listening or my somatic healing subscription daily devotion, just head over to the show notes. Now, let's get into it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Healing Honeys. I am so excited for today's episode because this has come around in the most divine synchronicity. I am here today with Miranda Popen, and she came up on my Explore feed last week. I saw the Swipe album. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check this out. Started swiping. I was like, oh, this is good. This girl is good. Then I went on her profile and her content, oh my God, so informative, so educational. And one of the things that I love about what Miranda's doing is that so often, and I get why people do this, they gatekeep the information behind portals and in programs. Go get your bag, girls. I got to do that too, you know? I'm good with that. But the amount of information on Miranda's profile just literally blew me away. And we are going to get into that and so much more today. We are going to be talking about PCOS, the PCOS action plan, what we would do or what Miranda would do if today was the day that she was like, oh shit, like I have PCOS and I'm going to go on this journey. And we're also going to be talking about the connection to people pleasing and perfectionism. Because boy, oh boy, it is an interesting one. So welcome to the podcast, Miranda. How are you today?
I am good. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. And you are a hormone nutritionist. Before we get into today's episode, just tell me a tiny bit about what that means and what you do with so many women today.
Yeah, so funny enough, I never thought this was actually going to be a practice. I just wanted to fix my own shit because I was dealing with thyroid issues. I was gaining weight like crazy, dealing with periods that would last 6 weeks at a time, like straight bleeding, and would lose my lashes and my eyebrows, and I was losing my hair. I looked like a cancer patient. It was crazy. I was just wearing a hat all the time because I was so embarrassed, and I could not get any kind of answers. So took myself through schooling. I went through NYU, but that still wasn't enough. I had to start studying the thyroid, and that's when I started to uncover, just because that you are in that normal range doesn't mean shit. Sorry, I really like to swear, but
no, we swear on here.
It's good. Awesome. I know you do. But I just wanted to heal myself, and I was dealing with all these thyroid issues, and they were just telling me to go on birth control. It's going to reset your hormones. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. And then I was going through different nutritionists and dietitians, naturopaths, personal trainers with different meal plans. Nobody ever sat me down and broke down the whys, what's, how. So that's pretty much the bread and butter. I stepped away from the basic business model that majority of nutritionists lean on. And very similar to Martha Stewart, I'm trying to focus on the void. So what was lacking in all of those conversations? Education. Because for me, as soon as I get something, you don't have to tell me a second time. But if I don't understand it, I'm going to keep on forgetting. So it really just stemmed from my own problem. And now we're working with women with PCOS, endometriosis, cysts, fibroids, endo. One of my favorite things is like, we're getting women pregnant here. Women that were told that they cannot carry and that they've only been given 3 eggs. I've got them carrying and I've got them 15 eggs. It's crazy what is happening here. I love what I do. It's wild.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with that because something I really want to do more of this year is the fertility piece, because as a 36-year-old who doesn't have a plan to have a child in this year because my career is like exploding, and sure, maybe I wish my career exploded when I was 25, but it didn't. That's just how it is. I have a very unique belief and confidence in not later life fertility, but I just feel 100% confident in getting pregnant later into my 30s and even into my 40s. And I know some people will be listening to this being like, girl, you're fucking crazy. But I've seen it in people all around me, people in this space. And you are one of the people that like lead people on that journey. So we're going to have to come back on another podcast at some point for us to get into that if you're up for it.
Oh, rats. Yeah, I guess I can.
Perfect. Okay.
Not like I'm obsessed with the Healing Honeys or have watched every single episode.
I know. So I messaged Miranda and I was like, hi, like I have this podcast. Like, would you like to come on it? She was like, girl, oh my God, I've listened to every single episode you've ever put out. And I was like, shit, like it's in these moments that I realized like, okay, people actually listen to my podcast.
Oh yeah. And not just one, like you helped me in so many ways of just what can I do more? And that was actually kind of like going into the topic that we are in today. Like I knew like I could not support women if I didn't focus on all this other emotional, mental, triggering shit if I was trying to hold space for the full 360-degree client that I work with. So you're great. You're definitely a piece to this whole entire journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to get into the piece that you are today. But what I do just want to say here is what just came to mind there was that you can't type A your way out of conditions that you type A your way into. And I know that's going to be a huge thing that we're going to talk about today because this month, January, this will be going out in February, but earlier in January, I did all of these focus groups with these amazing, high performing, high achieving women going after their dreams, trying to balance it all, because that's the kind of woman that I want to work with this year. And I kid you not when I say 80% of the people that I interviewed had PCOS. 80% of people. But when I looked at the research this morning, the World Health Organization says that PCOS actually only affects an estimated of 8 to 13% of reproductive age women. And that for me was kind of crazy because I'm seeing this PCOS everywhere. You open TikTok, everyone feels like they have PCOS. And I'm not shaming them. Even I am querying, like, since I found out that you could have PCOS without having cysts on your ovaries, even I am questioning, like, oh shit, do I have this? We'll get into that. But tell me how frequently you see this in your practice.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if I can really put a number on it because a lot of women don't even know that they are dealing with PCOS, but they have all the PCOS symptoms, or they're not ovulating, or they're dealing with fertility issues. So there's so many pieces to the puzzle, and their doctors have just not tested them properly, or they are not going beyond putting somebody on metformin just because they're not ovulating. Like they're not looking at the full entire puzzle. So I'm going to say maybe 1 of 3 or 1 of 4 women that I'm probably working with is dealing with either some kind of full official PCOS diagnosis, or they just haven't been diagnosed yet.
So let's talk about some of the symptoms that people will be experiencing when they come into your office or when they start working with you, or maybe when they're scrolling on TikTok and they see a TikTok and they're like, hey, wait, that's me. Do I have PCOS? Like, how do you see this showing up for most women? Is it the same for everyone? Is everyone experiencing their own different symptoms? Talk me through that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's different types of PCOS with different symptoms, and not all women with PCOS are overweight or have acne or have excess hair growth. And this can be a massive confusion that delays the diagnosis, and then therefore is going to delay proper treatment and just make everything way worse. And it actually becomes a really big mental health issue. For example, here in Toronto, we have a lot of women that are sent to CAMH, which is the Canadian Institute of Mental Health Association. And it actually used to be called the Sane Asylum because women who were put on all the treatment plans for PCOS, they were all just plans for male biology. So it's wild because now when I'm hearing they're dealing with women who are dealing with stage 4 mental health issues, I'm dealing with women that are in stage 1. And we're just putting PCOS into remission naturally. And this is not going into some crazy medication plan. It's really just about understanding symptoms and following up with blood tests or an ultrasound. And it does need to go beyond just looking at cysts on ovaries. So the first sign for a lot of women It usually comes back to irregular periods or missing periods. If you know that you're not ovulating or your cycles are messed up, then the next step would be to figure out which kind of PCOS you are actually dealing with.
One of the reasons I'm so fascinated by this is, like you said, some women won't have acne, some women won't have weight gain. And I have never had either of those things. And my periods have always been pretty regular, pretty pain free. So I never thought PCOS was anything to do with me. Okay. In hindsight, when I look back, I had a lot of body hair and I guess I was always kind of like ashamed by it. And I remember when I was 18, my mom was like, just wax it off. We'll take it to the doctor so we can show the doctor, right? Obviously, the doctor did nothing to help me whatsoever. And then it never really came across my radar anymore. But this month, since I've been researching into this and going through your content, I've realized, oh, that could have been a sign of PCOS. So let's talk about the weight gain, the acne, the body hair. Is that one specific type of PCOS?
So if we go through, I'm going to even say like to go through 3, like, yes, technically there's 4, but this would be the one that you're most likely relating to. And it's going to be the insulin type. And there's this whole downstream effect between what's going on with your blood sugar and how it's going to impact your cortisol, therefore your estrogen. And then all of a sudden you have too much estrogen and it starts turning into testosterone, and we start seeing all those chin hairs. So insulin resistance PCOS is typically the most common. We have these high levels that stop ovulation in their tracks, causing irregular periods, irregular ovulations, all the symptoms. And this is brought by diet. Yeah, a lot of the symptoms can show up with also weight gain and obesity and hirsutism and mood swings and lack of periods. But I'm going to say majority of adults, kind of like functioning alcoholics, or these functioning imbalanced blood sugar adults just dealing with one blood sugar spike and crash after the next. This is the craziest thing, that if you were to wear a glucose monitor while you were stressed out, you would be watching your blood sugar levels go nuts. So majority of the time, we're not really understanding how our cortisol is impacting our blood sugar. And then all of a sudden, you're not paying attention to those little habits that you have where you maybe don't feel hungry in the morning, or you're skipping lunch, or you're going really long without eating past 3-4 hours. So we're dealing with these crashes, and this PCOS is you're borderline diabetic and you're becoming this insulin resistant PCOS because also cortisol is up so high from how you are impacting your blood sugar. So when cortisol is up so high, think of it this way: you're being chased by a wild-toothed tiger, and the wild-toothed tiger is basically in competition with your reproductive hormones. Only one can get through the door. What is more intense on the system? Is it the wild-toothed tiger with the adrenaline that it comes with? Or is it this nice little, oh, reproductive hormones, I'm going to have a baby? So you have progesterone and cortisol always competing for the same pathway, and cortisol is always going to win. So if you are being chased by a wild-toothed tiger, your body is going to send you more adrenaline. It's not going to be focused on getting you to ovulate and getting you to release progesterone. It's always going to support the cortisol because that is what's going to lead to survival. If you were to all of a sudden release progesterone, your body would be dumb, and our bodies are not dumb. Our bodies are the smartest thing in the world, and it knows better. If you're dealing with high stress, even if that's you dealing with an amazing meeting, or let's say you're at Disney World and you're still skipping lunch, or you're going too long, you're having fun. It can be stimulation, it can be cortisol, good or bad. It's still going to impact that blood sugar. And this is probably the most common scenarios, or some of the most common scenarios that I am constantly met with when dealing with a lot of clients dealing with PCOS.
I love that we are talking about this because it makes sense, right? Like, I live a very high cortisol and high stress lifestyle. And the moment that I understood about how cortisol impacts progesterone and estrogen, it just started to make more sense. Oh, wow, this is a real thing. And I think what's also important here is that a lot of people will say, well, I don't feel stressed. And that's because we now live in these societies where our bodies are essentially so accustomed to this stress all the time that actually, yes, it is impacting us internally, even if not externally, right?
It's actually insane. I work with so many first responders, some of the most triggered, traumatized people. and they have the audacity to tell me that they're not stressed. It
Wow.
blows my mind. I'm like, you are so stimulated all the time. And I will actually also say too, I see this, of course, with a lot of the business boss babes. I see this also with a lot of the social media women who are hustling their asses off. And it's great because they're crushing it, but they're also overly stimulated to the point that we just cannot regulate their cycle. We can't regulate their progesterone. And I'm actually almost at a point of saying no to no longer working with these influencers because it's great that they want to support themselves, but they need to have boundaries and they've got none. There's so much people pleasing and so much perfectionism that's prioritizing over your base necessities of just like eating food and drinking water and going to the bathroom. It's so intense. So of course your cortisol is going to go up. Why would your body risk you of getting pregnant when you can't even support yourself right now?
Yeah, that is crazy. And it's me, that is me. So I'm not judging these women, but I've also become very clear on what I said at the beginning of the episode, that if I want to have a baby later in my 30s or 40s, I need to be sorting this shit out now to be able to nourish a body and build a resilient body that is capable of doing what I want to do. And I want to go into the perfectionism and the people pleasing, but I also want to tie back to this point around childhood stress. Now, if we look at me at 18 years old, taking this chest hair to the doctors and basically saying, what is going on here? Now, with what I know as a qualified practitioner and having lived this journey through and through, I can understand that already at 18 years old, my biology was screaming at me that it was not okay. And a year later, I had my tonsils out, another sign, that this is just, there is no balance in my body, not good. But if you'd asked me at 18 years old, are you stressed? There would have been, no, I haven't had a stressful childhood. No, I haven't, been stressed at school. I'm good. I'm in the cool group. I've got friends. I play sport. Looking back, clearly my body was so stressed at that point already. And going to therapy helped me understand that actually there was a lot of developmental trauma in my life, in my family dynamic. How do you see women coming to you saying, oh, I didn't have a stressful childhood, but actually, is that a part of this puzzle?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting to even talk to women who are in the first stage of perimenopause, 35, 45 years old, and they're still dealing with this perfectionism, people pleasing, and they're not relating it back to their cortisol. When I see women who are dealing with these OCD patterns or these perfectionism patterns, well, we know that comes back to a lot of control from parents, but how is that also impacting your environment? So majority of girls are starting to get their periods. There's this onset puberty that's happening, and we have to question, yes, for sure, nutrition. How are you fueling the excess estrogen? But also at the same time too, what's going on in the environment, whether it's through the state of how your mom is running an impeccable home to the point where everything has to be clean and she gets stressed out when it's not, or maybe to the point where there's this perfectionism expected with you, with maybe how you're studying and sports and going to sleep, whatever that may be. It's impacting us way more than we actually recognize in that heat of the moment. So then later on, we're dealing with perimenopause and we're dealing with all this aftermath trauma triggers, and we're struggling with fertility issues, or we're going into perimenopause, menopause, and we're struggling with all these additional symptoms that doctors are just not piecing together. Perimenopause and thyroid issues are pretty much identical. And if you had dealt with your shit when you were still menstruating regularly, we wouldn't be here. But there's so much conversation around hormone therapy, and that's definitely a bigger conversation for another day. But we are constantly in this mind frame of, well, what else can I take? What's the next medication? What's the next thing that I can do with a dermatologist? What's metformin, spirulactone, birth control? So I don't actually have to work on myself internally and externally.
Literally the biggest mic drop moment ever. Really glad you said that, because all you got to do is open TikTok and you are flooded with advice. Just walk 10,000 steps a day, just
Mhm.
eat this, just do this, just drink this spearmint tea, etc. And sure, I mean, actually, let me ask you, those things are going to help to some extent, right?
For sure, but this is where it starts driving me a little bit crazy. You'll see on my Instagram account, I'm giving you breakdowns of supplements and what they do, but at the end of the day, if you haven't gotten your blood work taken and you don't know where your levels are and you're not working with somebody to actually support you, you really have no business applying this. I want you to educate and I want you to understand. So if you are working with someone, which a lot of people are, they're working with the naturopaths, nutritionists, dietitians, or some kind of coach, and they've been put on something years ago and they don't understand, so they just stop taking it when it could have been helping them. I really like to share all the information possible. You're right, I don't like to gatekeep. So my irritation is you'll see this whole trend about Vitex and Chaseberry for PCOS, and every time that I'm talking about PCOS on my page or somebody's asking about it, there's constant messages afterwards of all these other users of Instagram, not practitioners, talking about try Vitex, do this, lean into Chaseberry. But depending on where your LH and prolactin levels are, you could be making your symptoms way worse, especially not understanding how to use it, how long to use it, why you're using it, what you are supposed to be seeing in addition to you using it, how to make it work, how to support it the most. So it is pretty wild how many people are just going down some TikTok, Dr. Google rabbit hole and trying to self-help, which is great. I love it. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, go to school. If you can't do that, work with somebody.
I agree totally. I always say it is not about self-supplementing. You need to know what is going on inside of your body. And, just to add more to that, if your gut is not even going to be able to absorb the supplements you're taking, or your liver isn't detoxing properly, then just taking some supplements from TikTok is not going to solve the problem. Hi, my honeys. You might have noticed that there are no ads on today's episode, and that is because today's episode is sponsored by Whoop, the brand that I use every single day of my life to help me feel like a golden girl. Now, I want to share with you why I am so obsessed with my Whoop and why it has changed my health and healing journey. Because let's be honest, are there really any women out there that are not overstressed, overstimulated, and always on the go? The more women I talk to, the more I see that we are all balancing so much. I'm talking work, workouts, running a house, running a career, trying to work out, looking after kids, maintaining relationships around us, looking after our health, our beauty, our happiness, and our hormonal imbalances, like today's episode is talking about. Now, as someone who runs at 101 miles per hour, doing all of these things and rarely slowing down, I didn't realize that I was running on adrenaline and cortisol in these moments. And that was why I would always crash at the weekend when those levels would come down. Whoop for me has been the absolute dream to help me work out what is actually going on inside of my body. Now, if you're not already familiar, Whoop is a wearable health and fitness coach that provides you with feedback and actionable insights into your sleep, recovery, training, stress, and overall health. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. But for me, it's not just about tracking numbers. It is really, truly about reconnecting with myself and understanding what is going on inside of me so I can give my body what it needs rather than pushing against it, which is always going to have long-term consequences. Now, I'm going to be honest, my Whoop gets my attention every single morning before my boyfriend does. I literally will wake up with my phone on red light mode, check the app, and I will check out my sleep performance, my recovery, and my HRV. I honestly get so excited before the stats come in. It's a little bit weird, but I love that for me. And Whoop uses this very clear color-coded traffic light system to help me understand really what is going on the inside. If it's green, it basically means you're good to go. If it's yellow, it might mean that I need to take it a little more easy today. And if it's red, it's really saying, okay, hold up, your body needs specific things from me today. And I use this data to then basically formulate what to do with my day. So if it's green, Great, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go and do a heavy lift. I might work late. I might really take on a lot of strain that day because my body is ready for it. If it's yellow, I might consider, okay, maybe today is not the day for a huge heavy lift, but actually a Pilates class or a reformer class or a walk is going to be better for me. And you bet that if it's red, I now officially have broken the cycle of pushing through, and I will understand that working out today should not be my priority. Staying up late is not going to be a good idea. And instead, I will prioritize an early night, a down-regulating breathwork session, and probably a nice, cozy, warm evening at home. But it isn't just this recovery data and this traffic light system that for me is so helpful. It's also that you start to actually become friends with your body and you start to understand how different decisions in your day-to-day life impact what is going on the inside of you. For example, my recovery score shoots down if I do a heavy lift, and that's normal because lifting is very taxing on the body, but we need to make sure we're giving ourselves the rest and recovery to come back to baseline. Same thing with hot Pilates. If my body is not in a great space to go and do that, it can be very stressful and taxing on the body, also impacting my recovery. And the same with flying. Flying and jet lag literally wrecks my recovery score. And let's not even talk about what a bad night's sleep does. I'm talking interrupted sleep, going to bed really late, or just getting up really early. Before I started using Whoop, I wasn't very connected to my internal world, so I would just push through all of these things. And the cortisol and the adrenaline from the working out or being on the go would generally sort of keep me going. But now I have those metrics right in front of me. It makes it so much harder to ignore them. Because of that, I found that I've become so much more soft and gentle with myself. And for the girl that finds balance as a word that I do not relate to, it has definitely helped bring me back to a state of balance and homeostasis that actually allows me to speed up rather than constantly crashing and slowing down. And we all know that we're supposed to understand our cortisol and these metrics, especially if we're on a hormone balancing journey. And today, Miranda talks so much around how cortisol is at the root of so many of the PCOS cases that she sees. So for me, having this data has just been the most amazing way to reconnect me to my body and start to live a life that is great for me, my nervous system, and my hormones. Honestly, Whoop has helped me connect with my body in ways that I didn't think were possible. So whether you're on a hormone balancing journey or you are on a nervous system regulating journey, Whoop works for everybody. And if you're interested in taking control of your health and fitness so you can excel in all areas of your life, then you've got to check out Whoop. You can head to join.whoop.com/healinghoneys for either a 30-day free trial or 1 month free if you opt for a paid membership. And on top of that, you get to join us in our Healing Honeys Whoop group. And I love how that rhymes. Working with Whoop is a dream come true for me. I love the brand. I love what they do for people. And I love what they can do for our health and healing journeys too. So come and join me on this journey. All of this will be linked in the show notes, as well as our Whoop group. And now let's get back into the episode, talking all things hormones, PCOS, and healing. So you've said blood work there. Today we're talking about the PCOS action plan. And is that the first thing that you would say is non-negotiable if someone is thinking, I think I have PCOS, I think it might be this kind, or maybe they don't know what kind? Would you say that they should start with blood work, and what blood work should they be asking for?
Yeah, so the way that I like to approach PCOS is really with two things. One, I want to start building up a foundation with you and make a few nutrition changes. And these are safe and these are going to be based off of symptoms for starters, and build that foundation and then get you to understand how to eat for each phase or even where you are in your cycle. After seeing how your body's responding from there, within a month or two, I'm pretty much going to send you for a list of tests to request with your doctor. And majority of the time, we are also going to get the setback of them saying no. So I like to have a bit of ammo before going into the doctor's office that we've at least tracked 2 cycles together. We're acknowledging what is going on with each phase. And if you are ovulating regularly, what we want to change and why. Therefore, leading us to what test to request. So basic blood work that you could at least press is going to be your LH, your FSH, your testosterone, your DHEA, your estradiol levels. But I'm also going to say prolactin, your LH and prolactin. If one is elevated, specifically your prolactin, or if it's in the norm, depending on where your LH levels are, always depending on where they are, we might want to suppress one to elevate the other to get you to ovulate again. It really depends on what's going on with your cycle. Fasting insulin and glucose are so key. Getting your stress hormones are crucial. And then I'm going to say TSH. So this is where we get a little bit sticky, because I can say, get your full blood, your thyroid panel, but majority of doctors are going to say, I'm not going to test your T3, T4, depending on where your TSH is. You need to be a good self-advocate. And this is where you need to also talk about your other symptoms. So for the inflammatory PCOS person, so this is the second type of PCOS, your T3 and T4 are probably going to suck at converting. So you're going to notice that you are gaining weight, that you either are overweight, or you cannot lose weight no matter what you are trying to do. You're also going to feel fatigue, and you're going to suck at dealing with the cold. These are just a couple little examples of how your T3 and T4 convert. Well, I mean, so you cannot deal with those symptoms. That's going to be the easiest one to say, but the T3 and T4 are a big part of the full TSH. And your TSH and your pregnenolone are kind of like the mothership of progesterone. So there's a big domino effect that needs to happen here. And it's so wild to me how much resistance we get when it comes to understanding the T3, T4. When I can see that information, I can better understand what's the additional changes we need to make with your nutrition to support us moving forward.
I love what you said about tracking your cycles before going into this appointment if you are trying to go through a more traditional health route, to come armed with that information. And just here, as we're going through this point of the episode, I just want to clarify. So we've spoken about insulin-resistant PCOS to begin with, and that's very much tied to stress and cortisol. And now you've just briefly spoken about inflammatory-related PCOS. How is that one different, or how is it going to show up differently from the more insulin-resistant PCOS?
So this is the kind of PCOS that can be seen in women who are not overweight, but normal weight or even underweight. They don't feel like they have the classic PCOS symptoms. Maybe there's more of an inflammatory response that stops ovulation and causes these irregular cycles. And it just comes from a lot of the food that we're also having, the stress of dealing with gluten and dairy and sugar and soy, or even from the overexposure of endocrine disruptors. There are multiple influencers that can cause suppressed ovulation or irregular ovulation. And it can even be in I'm going to say, reliance or even artificial sugars. Like, we're having too much Diet Coke. I know that there's this whole Diet Coke trend that's happening right now, and the protein shake, but it could be due to how you are even eating a vegan or vegetarian no carb diet. And the lack of ovulation is going to cause these symptoms, but it won't necessarily look or feel the same way as common as the insulin-resistant PCOS.
I love that you just explained how many things can be inflammatory, because really today's life is inflammatory. The state of the world is inflammatory. And even the state of our thoughts, the thoughts that we have, they can either have an inflammatory response or a calming, protective response. So it's just so interesting to understand that really the life that we're building around us is either kind of provoking that inflammation or it's sort of calming it. And that for me is fascinating. That's why healing PCOS isn't just about taking the supplements you see on TikTok. It's about, particularly for this inflammatory type of PCOS, but really for all, and really for almost every health condition as well. Big generalization, but it's really about building an anti-inflammatory lifestyle that can allow your body to come back to homeostasis, come back to balance, come back to the cyclical nature of who we are, rather than the stressed, inflamed, always on, kind of on guard version of our body. Do you agree with that?
100%. Like, it's like your body, it loves balance, it hates extremes, and we are constantly forcing it to be in this most extreme state. We are overtraining, we're undereating, we are, if anything, sleep deprived, and the body is just trying to give you these constant red flags out of so much love. That's the thing that crushes me the most, is a lot of this is coming from self-abandonment. Why are you abandoning yourself? Like, why won't you just feed that little girl? Like, why won't you just rest for that little girl? Because she did nothing to you, and you're treating her like crap, treating her as if she's being punished for what? Because, yeah, you want to blow up on Instagram, or you want to do all these things with work, and you're showing all these sacrifices. But can you see how also, like, the people pleasing and the perfectionism is still getting in your way? And it's all based off of society, for sure. We are living in this world that is leading with all of these expectations that this is how you're supposed to live and this is how you're supposed to function in order to be successful, that you can't live this way. It is actually wild what is happening in my world. The more that I am focusing on what makes me happy and how I can set more boundaries and how I can be myself to the greatest degree, and everything is falling into place. It's actually insane in comparison to me trying to hustle and push and make all of this work. It's wild what these boundaries are doing for me, and a lot of with the women that I work with, and majority of the women that I work with, they end up quitting their jobs, leaving their relationships, setting boundaries around going to the office because they prefer to work at home, or they're just telling their partners that they are straight up done working. And obviously, not everybody has the luxury to do that, but maybe setting more boundaries around when you're going to have meetings, when you're not, when you are going to exercise, when you are going to sleep. How can you prioritize sleep? How are you unwinding? Because right now, unwinding with the TV on isn't going to do anything for you. Yeah. And like the mouth breathing and the snoring, like these are all things that are going to still continue to impact your cortisol. Do not think that you can fix your PCOS if you are mouth breathing and snoring.
Oh God, we have so much to talk about. I just literally had to turn to my iPad to write down notes, which never happens because there's so many things. And I just wrote down about the little inner child. And this is something that I have struggled with so much in my life. And a lot of the work that I do is this concept of I'll be happy when. And it's I'll be happy when I make that money, or when I find a partner, or when I do this, or when I blow up on TikTok. And what I have found is that we self-abandon ourselves in the journey to thinking I'll be happy when. And not only self-abandon, but also self-neglect. Like you said, not eating properly, not sleeping properly, not exercising properly, living on takeout or emotionally unavailable men and women to get those dopamine hits. And a big part of my work is going back into that inner child, because what I see is that 9.9 times out of 10, there is a belief that we are not worthy, we are not enough for who we are, as we are, but we never face up to how deeply crushing that reality is. And that's how my therapy journey brought me here and has ultimately led to such revolutionary healing. So for anyone listening who is thinking, yeah, I don't understand. I know I need to feed myself. I know I need to sleep, but I'll be on my phone scrolling until 1 a.m. or whatever. For me, starting to do that self-work around worthiness and the internal shame that I was holding was really the missing piece of the puzzle, because melting that away led to me starting to believe that I was worthy of boundaries. My voice mattered. My expression was important. Is that some of the work that you see with your clients?
Yeah, actually, I get every client to do a personality test so I can see where they are on the spectrum of their attachment style. And then we will make a morning routine that's based off of their specific nervous system and what it actually requires for them to support these supplements. Because you can take all the supplements and I can give you that $1 million plan, but cortisol trumps all. It doesn't matter how well you're eating and what's going on with your supplements. Cortisol will trump all. And these things are not going to work in a bad environment. So it's great to see where we are on the attachment scale. And then typically when you're getting your supplements, you're also getting a handful of books or audiobooks that you need to start working on for your attachment style, because we need to deal with your cortisol. Whatever cortisol you're dealing with, whether it's the anxious avoidant attachment, and to whatever degree they are, whatever hormonal condition you're dealing with needs to be supported through this mental emotional piece.
Oh, I am loving where this episode is going, because I did not think we were going to be going into attachment styles and PCOS. And I'm so happy that we are. But also, as someone who owns a somatic healing portal, to hear you say that cortisol is like the make or break, makes me feel so affirmed because that's what I thought. That's what I realized, which is why I was like, wow, I need a solution to kind of help myself like come down from this. But I also want to go back quickly to what you said about red flags. So I wonder if you see this in practice, that high performing women, high achieving women, very busy women are ultimately disconnected from their bodies in a way that they're not aware of. And that sounds abstract, but let me tell you what I mean. I would think that I would feel great from the outside. Then I got a whoop. And when I started to manage my recovery and my sleep, I started to realize, wow, my recovery is red. It is 32%, but I feel great. And I realized I was running on cortisol and adrenaline. I wasn't actually connected into how I felt. So I was missing the red flags, the signals from my body because I was disconnected from it. Is that part of the journey, like you bringing women with potentially PCOS or PCOS back into their body so they can start to actually communicate with it?
For sure. It's interesting because there's even that signal of I've only ever had one bowel movement a day. That's been my whole entire life. Why would I question that's abnormal? Right? Or there would be for as long as I remember, I've never had breakfast. I would just wake up and go to school. We're not seeing these little things as red flags. Another one would be like you peeing in the middle of the night. Massive red flag. And it's wild that we are not questioning things. We're not put in this place in society of questioning things until things get really bad, right? I am constantly trying, on top of working with a lot of my one-on-one clients, there's this big education piece. I truly believe that there's no point in working with me if you're not actually understanding what is going on. So sometimes we have to pause what we're trying to do with the nutrition and get you to fully understand if this is happening, this is what we need to do. So if you're dealing with this craving, this is what we need to do. If you're dealing with this specific craving at this time, I want you to do this. If you're sleeping and you're waking up in the middle of the night, or you're not getting that awesome Whoop score, I want you to do this. Like we kind of almost have to prioritize these personal protocols. And yeah, it's a lot more work, but soon they start going away. This is not something that you're going to have to keep working on for the rest of your life. Think of this as like a broken arm. You break your arm, you put it in a cast, you let it heal, you move on. Same situation with hormones. And that's the coolest thing that I think about, is that it gets easier. Your hormones are broken, you put them in the cast, you take them through physiotherapy, which is like working with me, and then you move on. You have an exit strategy. Things are working better. You have fixed the things that are going to support them, which also means you don't need to live off of supplements for the rest of your life either, which is so nice.
I'm so happy you said that because the supplements as band-aid solutions is one of my real gripes, considering that I'm obsessed with root cause healing. I'm like, that is not going to get to the bottom of the problem. And I also love that you spoke about pee and poop. You know, some people will be listening to this thinking like, oh my God, I had no idea that I should be pooing more than once a day, or that getting up in the middle of the night is a red flag. And I think that's why I love the work that you do and the work I'm doing, because we have the conversations that are like uncomfortable to the outside world. Example, I was in Mexico City last week and I did a hot Pilates class. Now, everyone's obsessed with hot Pilates, right? Myself included. But when I tell you how badly it fucked my Whoop score, I can't even tell you. I never go into the red. If I'm in the yellow, I'm concerned. As in, I'm in the green. I have optimized my life that I am great. My health is great. I went so low in the red, and I was like, I have a duty here to share this on Instagram, because everyone out there will be thinking, oh, I've been told Pilates is good for me. It's lower intensity. It's going to be better for my hormones. No, it was so hot. It was so intense. I was sweating out all of my minerals in my body. I wasn't replenishing them. I knew that I had to share this with Instagram, much like you're sharing about pee and poop and things that we need to be talking about so we can all help each other on this journey, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we see all these things about cyclical training and what's best to do for each phase. And for sure, that can be so confusing for women with PCOS. But then let's say if you have PCOS and you finally have a regular cycle and you're told to do this cyclical training, and you're then all of a sudden going into this place of not ovulating or now longer cycles, but you're trying to be healthier, they're not putting the pieces together. This is elevating your cortisol. When you get hot, your heart rate goes up. When you get cold, your heart rate slows down. Your body is always going to adjust accordingly to the environment. So again, if cortisol is going up and you're in the red, which majority of us are, as healthy as you think you are being, society has definitely convinced us that exercise is healthy for everyone, depending on when and how and what you're doing in your cycle can either help or amplify your symptoms.
I love that we're talking about this. I do feel bad for everyone as well. Even as a health practitioner myself, I will admit it is so overwhelming. First of all, we're told that cold plunging is good for us. Then we're told, no, that's not good for us. Then we're told hot Pilates and infrared sauna is good for us. Then we're not told, oh, if you have insane hormonal imbalances and you're not told that you're sweating out all your minerals and you're not remineralizing, no one teaches you about these things. So you do feel like a bit of a pinball because you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Oh no, fuck, 2 months later, I've been told I shouldn't do that. And that's why I really urge people to work with someone like you, because it is overwhelming. And that overwhelm is stress. That is cortisol. That is nervous system dysregulation, which in a way is just going to perpetuate the whole cycle. Same thing with going low carb. No, we need those good carbs to help fuel our hormones, but we're told so many different things. So if anyone is listening to this and thinking, I'm loving this, but there's so much information, if it's possible, I urge you to go and work with a professional, because I promise you everything starts to make sense and your nervous system will feel so loved and supported that you can actually start to regulate, which is a huge part of this healing journey, right?
Totally. Find a practitioner that has the same values and morals as you, so you can take up space and you can freely ask all of those questions. A lot of them won't, and a lot of them don't give you that space, unfortunately. But yeah, we think that cold plunging is so great for our system. If you are dealing with dysregulation or dysregulated nervous system, and majority of us are dealing with these inactive pituitary glands, dealing with this pituitary dysfunction, you've got no business cold plunging. And when you are on your period, when you need the most amount of nutrients because you are losing the lining of your uterus, you are losing nutrients, why does it make sense to sauna? Why would it make sense to be vegan, vegetarian at that time when your body needs the most? And all my vegan, vegetarian babes, you can come after me. That is totally fine. And we can make this make more sense for you. It's not about just being vegan, vegetarian. And yes, absolutely, you get nutrients from your phytoestrogens. But for an estrogen dominant body, we don't need more estrogen. It's very important that we start understanding how things are actually working for you, working against you. And you will always see that based off your cycle and based off your symptoms. Think of your period as a monthly report card so you can fully understand how everything is actually going in the rest of the cycle.
Okay, so as we get into the last section of today's episode, let's start with those actionable tips and tricks. You have amazing information on morning, lunchtime, and evening hacks to help someone with PCOS or someone who thinks they might have it. So let's start with the morning. What should people be doing in the morning to better manage their symptoms or this condition?
Yeah, so a nervous system routine, and I really hate using the word stress management, so I'm always going to say the nervous system routine or the pituitary gland routine should really focus on regulating cortisol and supporting blood sugar. And you've got all these awesome exercises of shaking and yelling and deep belly breathing. All of those are fantastic. I'm going to say the more that you can do to activate your pituitary gland, which is right next to that vagus nerve. So if we scream, yell, all that good stuff, it's going to support that pituitary gland. That's going to be one of the best things that you can do first thing in the morning. Diaphragmatic breathing, prioritizing 30, I like to say 40 grams of protein with healthy fats to stabilize blood sugar. And then you want to do some kind of adrenal cocktail for electrolyte balance, or even base minimum, lemon water, sea salt, go. Easy. Anything that you feel is actually going to stabilize your blood sugar. For my anxious versus my avoidance, you are going to know yourself best of what's going to support that system in coming down. But morning should look a little different than the midday versus the evening.
Okay, I love that about the making noise because I feel like no one talks about that. And that is why I created Burn and Breathe, the Pilates class, because you are literally supposed to make noise when you're working out. But if you go to a Pilates studio and you look at everyone around you, no one is breathing, everyone is suppressed. So I love that. And I want to know, what are your go-to breakfasts for this kind of person? You know, some people say, oh, 2 eggs isn't enough. What should they be putting with it? Is it meat? Is it chia pudding? What are your thoughts?
So when we're dealing with PCOS specifically for our nervous system, we want to be mindful that we're also not having too much animal protein. But I think a lot of people are also scared, thinking that if they up it, that they're like overdosing in protein or overeating in protein. So I think it's really important to get your macros organized for your height, age, weight, but also your activity. That doesn't mean that you need to track them all the time. I think it's just good to know, what does this amount of protein actually look like? Can you get familiar with what that looks like for you? So you can also start identifying when you're feeling great, when you're feeling moody, when cortisol levels are going up. So an easy breakfast could easily be, I would even say 3 eggs. And I love making my own turkey burgers, and I put a shit ton of veggies in them: cabbage, parsley, dill, carrots, mushrooms in them. That's an easy breakfast. I've got my proteins from the meat and the egg and the yolk and then the veggies. That's awesome. For somebody else who maybe can't handle the eggs, if you wanted to do some kind of Greek yogurt, something that is less inflammatory, could look like sheep yogurt with hemp seeds. You could add a little bit of berry if you wanted to. Again, we want to stabilize blood sugar, so I'm always going to suggest berries versus like mango, pineapple, peaches kind of thing. Otherwise, it could be something where it's sweet, savory. I'm not necessarily going to be a fan of oatmeal in this scenario, but if you wanted to do some kind of hemp chia based oatmeal, you can actually whip eggs into that and just makes it super fluffy. But I'm gonna try to always opt for real whole foods rather than always going for a protein shake. But yeah, of course, I much rather you eat something than not have anything at all. So if you need to do a protein shake and a handful of nuts, go, great. As long as you've got your proteins, fats, we're set.
Yes, I love this. And alongside the books that you mentioned earlier, which we'll link in the show notes, I'm also going to link the protein that I use, because I think it's very easy for people to think, okay, I'll get a protein powder, without realizing that honestly, 98% of them are full of so much shit that is not really what you should be doing. But there are a couple of really good, high quality, limited ingredient protein shakes that I will run past Miranda just to check. I know they're great. I've run them past so many other practitioners, but I'll make sure that they are Miranda approved, and we'll link them in the show notes. But like you said, it's not about that being the go-to. It's about that being like the emergency or the supplementation of a whole food diet. So I love that. What's your thoughts on doing exercise in the morning? Do you have any advice on morning exercise, lunchtime exercise, evening exercise?
Never train past 7 p.m. for starters. But let's look at the priority list, because majority of us are dealing with these priority lists that are kind of backwards. We are overtraining, we're skipping breakfast, we're not drinking, we are supplementing a bad diet, and prioritizing training over sleeping, when in general it needs to be, did you have a good score on your Whoop? Do you need to sleep in a little bit more? I'd rather you prioritize that, because that's what's going to lower your cortisol. You can still sleep off your body fat. You sleeping more does not mean it's going to work against your fitness goals. It's actually going to support them. But if we are prioritizing exercise over that, I'm going to say shift your perspective and get your priorities straight. So focus on sleep first. If you're getting in your 7-8 hours of uninterrupted, non-mouth breathing sleep, for sure, you could exercise first thing in the morning if you want to. Do not do it fasted. Give yourself a little something. And it might be a little weird getting into that at first. It could be 1 egg. It could be half a protein shake if you want to. It could be a handful of nuts. Do that first. And it'll be really interesting. If you commit to that for 6 to 7 weeks to create a new neurological pattern, and then all of a sudden take it out, you are going to recognize how fasting or fasted exercise is massively impacting your cortisol and is not supporting you. But you're also just going to feel off. You're going to notice that your cortisol levels are just a little bit higher. when you're going through that process and it's just a little bit harder to wind down. So do not exercise fasted. Have a little something. You can still exercise in the morning, but we want to prioritize sleep. I'm definitely a morning workout girl. Not everyone can train at 8, 9, but if you can do it, awesome. Working out on the weekends is great too, but if you're just working out in the evening past 7 p.m., the time that you're supposed to be winding down, getting your cortisol down, but you're winding up just to exercise, we need to have better boundaries over this. So maybe 5 o'clock, 5:30, the latest is when you're exercising at night.
I love this so much. The point around sleep is so critical. It's really in the last 6 months. Again, it's just thanks to my Whoop. I just was not connected to my body. But now sleep trumps all for me. I will quite literally, in fact, I have quite literally changed my working schedule to not start my calls until 11 a.m. because otherwise I'm stressing from the moment I wake up. I'm undersleeping. I'm rushing out of bed, more likely to skip breakfast, less likely to be exercising and doing things in a regulated manner. Again, I know not everyone has that ability, but sleep, so obvious, but wow, it is so healing. It is so nourishing. I've really seen such a change with me since I've been focusing on prioritizing my sleep.
It's massive. I don't think people realize how mouth breathing and snoring and not getting in enough sleep massively impacts their blood sugar and their cortisol. We have way more control over our hormones than we've ever been led on to believe, but we don't believe it for some reason. And we also don't make these changes to even try to fix them. Again, we just think that this is the lot that we've been given in life and we just accept it. We don't need to do that anymore. It's 2025. Start questioning your shit and move forward.
I love this. So get your mouth tape, get your blackout blinds, make the room a bit colder, put some earplugs in, just please start sleeping. Please, we're begging you. Let's talk about lunchtime. Where do we go from here?
So a lot of us are skipping lunch, but if we can slow down, especially slow down your chewing, chew more. Help your digestive system. If it is stressed out because you're eating so fast, again, cortisol, you're putting more cortisol, more stress on the system itself. And that's the thing that's going to wake you up between 3 in the morning, 3, 5 in the morning. Your digestion, your liver is struggling because of how we are supporting every single bite. So focus on chewing each bite thoroughly. I'm going to say eat every 3-4 hours, making sure that proteins are always present, not just getting in some kind of protein bar, not trying to always get in some kind of extra protein shake. Try to always opt for real whole food as much as you can. Worst case scenario, veggies and hummus sticks. You can easily put hemp seeds or nutritional yeast in there. There's extra 20 grams of protein almost. And then lymphatic dry brushing is great. Stimulate the system, especially the armpits. We do not sweat enough. And that, again, is just more stress on the liver. So we're trying to regulate inflammation. We're trying to support nervous system resilience, and we're implementing the yelling and the screaming, or if you want to do contrast showers, all that's great, but we need to make sure that your liver can handle this stuff. And that's where a lot of us are kind of disconnecting the liver, the gut, the large intestine from all the hormonal work. If you want to fix your hormones, you have to look at your elimination system too. It's not one or the other, it's both. They are doing a tightly choreographed dance the whole entire time.
So happy you said that, because that's not the video that you get hit with when you open TikTok. Talk to me and just explain, I guess, in simple terms for someone that maybe has never heard about this, how things like estrogen dominance and really the symptoms associated with PCOS involve the liver, are very taxing on the liver, and often we need to support the liver as we try and support these symptoms.
Going to go through 2 different phases, and it's kind of like a bottleneck situation. And majority of society, they can kind of get through that first phase of the bottle, but we usually get stuck through the second phase, that bottleneck. And when we're dealing with PCOS, which is so tightly connected to your thyroid, and depending on where your thyroid levels are, you're going to see all over the place, eat more fiber to help with the bowel movements. But a lot of those fiber-based things, a lot of those healthy vegetables can actually make your thyroid worse. And that's just impacting these symptoms even more. So again, working with someone's going to be so key, but we want to make sure that we're eating for an elimination system that's achieving those 2 to 3 bowel movements a day.
Most people will be listening to this thinking that's crazy, but I poop a lot. So I'm like,
when you
great.
think about it, like when you're eating food and you're not going to the bathroom, like where does it go? What do you think is happening here? So it's just stacking up and your liver's constantly trying to reprocess it over and over again. If you had to go do the same laundry every single hour, you would get sick and tired of washing the same shirt, the same sweater every single hour. You just want to be done with the laundry. You are making your liver do that. So if you can support your body in better processing that excess estrogen, that progesterone can actually have a chance to stand up and show up for you and regulate the cycle and your symptoms and actually get you into this place where you can process excess estrogen more efficiently. And again, yes, you might want supplements to help, but that's where you can also get off of them because again, your system is starting to work. You're kind of turning everything on and it can show up for you the way that you want it to.
So important. I love this. Okay, so we've spoken about lunchtime, and then you've said we should be eating every couple of hours. So that brings us to kind of like mid-afternoon. There's a big pressure at the moment to get our 10,000 steps a day in. I am not good at hitting that. I am thinking about getting a walking pad because in Tulum I literally do 2,000 steps a day. Are you encouraging people to get outside in the afternoon? When should people be walking? How important are these 10,000 steps a day? Because that is also kind of stressful.
I mean, when you also think about it, though, it's really an hour of walking, right? So if you were to split this up, for one, getting in a little 10 minutes after a meal is going to be massive for your blood sugar. And like I said at the beginning of all this, if you can support your blood sugar, you can support your cortisol. And if there's anything that you were to ever take from any of the conversations that I have online, is that I hope it's you understand when you stabilize your blood sugar, majority of your symptoms will go away, especially for PCOS. So going for a little 15-minute walk after each meal, there's 45 minutes right there. That's really not that much. And that's going to be close to 8,000 steps. So it can be stressful, but it also, when you think about it, how nice would it be to step away from work for a hot second and take a moment to yourself or listen to a little walking meditation? It's still coming back to setting that boundary. It's not like anybody is actually punishing you to go take a moment for yourself, right? So I think it also comes back to perspective. So going from that mid-afternoon routine going into the evening, there needs to be this downshift, right? We want to lower cortisol and set you up to actually improve your sleep. So we all have heard about the blue light blocking glasses and dimming the lights and all that stuff and magnesium and ashwagandha and all that is great. But if we are not winding down for your specific nervous system, it's not really going to work so much for you. Some people need to journal. Some people need to process. Some people might need to come back to that screaming. Some people might need to do body scans. Some might need to activate that vagus nerve. It's whatever you need to do, but there needs to be something that's going to bring you from high stimulation to coming all the way down. So I'm going to say have the most boring evening possible. Do not watch a scary show. Do not go into some kind of thrilling reading book that you want to keep up reading for the next 2-3 hours. Do not start looking at emails, hopping on calls. Let's get you to wind down. So maybe that looks like a bath. Maybe that looks like listening to a meditation song or binaural beat, anything that's just going to get you to be in your body. Body scans are fantastic. They're my absolute favorite. But anything that's going to support you getting that 7-9 hours of quality sleep, that's what we need to focus on. And that's almost like having integrity towards yourself and having that boundary around yourself, which nobody likes to do. We can have boundaries. It's almost easier to have boundaries with everybody else. But when you say that you're going to do something, you do it, you actually do it. And when you don't, why is that actually happening? Why are you not showing up for yourself, even when it means having proper sleep?
Yeah, it comes back to that reparenting of our little child, doesn't it? We have to reparent ourselves. And it's just about finding what works for you. Like for me, just getting on my yoga mat for 10 minutes. And I don't even do yoga, but just moving my body to 3 songs coming out of my head into my body, maybe a 60-second shake. It is all I need. Like, it doesn't have to be an hour wind down routine. So I just encourage you guys to try moving, try breathing, try body scanning, find what works for you. And I know we're coming up on time. I have so many more questions, so you're going to have to come back on the podcast one day very soon. But is there anything you want us to finish on here for anyone who is navigating this PCOS journey?
I'm going to say, like, we talked about the 2 PCOS types so far, and I would just want to make sure that I've given full answers to at least the other one, and that's going to come back to birth control. This kind of PCOS is so common for women who have been on the pill, implant, shot, ring for a really long time, and periods or ovulation phases are not regulating. The whole point of birth control is to shut down communication between the pituitary gland and the ovaries in order to prevent pregnancy. So it can be really challenging to get things back online. So this can all happen. You can regulate your symptoms. You can fix this naturally. It's just about understanding your cycle. It's about understanding your body and doing one thing at a time. But understand why you're doing it. That's going to lead you down to a far more successful road versus trying some kind of action plan that you just don't get. Make sure you get it.
Perfect place to end. Make sure you get it. It's that mindful embodiment of the healing journey rather than just consciously analyzing and living in our head, taking supplements, scrolling on TikTok. Healing truly comes when we drop into our body and start to reconnect with it. Thank you so much for joining. We could have gone on for hours. We will go on for hours another day. I have so many more questions, but I am going to link all of Miranda's details in the show notes, including the books that she recommends, any particular products or supplements that she recommends, because high quality supplements are so important, as well as all of her details, her website, her socials, so you can go and find her, follow her, and even work with her if you are looking for the right support practitioner. But thank you so much for joining me today. I am so grateful that the universe brought us together, and I'm just very grateful for this time we've spent together.
Me too. I can't wait to talk more. We have to meet up.
We will. You need to come to Tulum. I need to come to Toronto, or we need to go to London or New York or LA. Any of them work for me.
Anything, anywhere.
Amazing. Maybe we can do something in person together one day as well. Would be amazing. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone listening. And we will see you all soon. Bye.